and brothers of researchers, and I urge all of you to subscribe to his Gov channel on YouTube. And it's a very nice channel. So bye.
Hello there, you're welcome to His Gov TV, and my name is Collins Nanaya Abebese. If today is your first time of visiting our channel, I would like you to subscribe to our channel. If you have already done so, we thank you very much for your support. So today we are looking at McCarthy's war, Charles McCarthy's war with the Ashanti. And in our previous video or lesson, we looked at the Ashanti-Fanti wars, the causes of the Ashanti-Fanti wars. And so in case you messed up on that lesson, you can scroll through our year 12 SHS3 playlist on our channel, and you may be able to find that lesson, because that is a continuation of this lesson. So today we are looking at the war that McCarthy fought with the Ashanti Kingdom in West Africa, and today they are found in Ghana. We are basically going to look at the reasons for the war and other issues associated with the war. So let's take a look at our lesson objectives for today. So one of our objectives after this lesson is for us to be able to identify, it's supposed to be identify. Okay, so why? Identify the ways in which the British interfered in local politics of the Gold Coast. Now, McCarthy's war started the interference of the British in the local politics of the Gold Coast. So prior to McCarthy's war, the British were only concerned with trade with the local people and had nothing to do with interference in the local politics of the people. Then we should be able to identify the causes of McCarthy's war with Ashanti. So what led to the wars between Ashanti and McCarthy? Why did McCarthy decide to go to war with Ashanti? So basically these two objectives are supposed to guide us in our discussions for today. So let's begin our lesson with our introduction. Now, Sir Charles McCarthy came to the Gold Coast in 1824 and in 1822 and died in 1824. Now, the British interference in local politics started with Sir Charles McCarthy, as I have already indicated. Now, McCarthy was a governor. So who was Charles McCarthy? He was a governor in Sierra Leone. He was later appointed by the British to take over the fort and castles from the African Company of Merchants in the Gold Coast in 1821. All right, so Sir Charles McCarthy was a governor in Sierra Leone, which was also a British colony. And in 1821, he was appointed by the British to actually come to the Gold Coast, now Ghana, to take over the fort and castles. So as I earlier indicated, prior to the arrival of Charles McCarthy, the British were not interested in local politics. They were basically, merchants. So the African Company of Merchants were basically merchants who were along the coast of the Gold Coast, and they were solely interested in trading with the local people. All right, and so McCarthy was appointed to be the governor of the Gold Coast. Now let's see what then happened. So why was McCarthy actually appointed as a governor of the Gold Coast? This was solely because there was the abolition of slave trade by the British. So by this period, 1821, the British had abolished slave trade, and so the British decided to engage in a legitimate trade, all right, a legitimate trade with the people. And so McCarthy arrived in the Gold Coast in 1822, as I already indicated. So the British had abolished slave trade by this uh, period. And mind you, there is a difference between and uh, slave trade and slavery. All right. So at this period, the British had abolished slave trade, and so they now wanted to trade in commodities, other than human beings, and that is what we termed as the legitimate trade. So the British wanted to trade legitimately in commodities other than human beings, so gold, cocoa, coffee, and other, commodities, and therefore they needed somebody who would come in to create, an atmosphere, an environment that is conducive for trading activities. And bear in mind that one of the responsibility of a government is to provide, an atmosphere that will facilitate trade. And so basically that is what Charles McCarthy was brought in to do, to ensure that there is an atmosphere to create an environment that would encourage trading in legitimate commodities other than human goods, and that is what we termed as a legitimate trade. Now, when Charles McCarthy arrived in the coast, a lot of things happened, or a lot of things were happening in the Gold Coast at this period, and those events that was taking place, or the status quo, or the status quo in the Gold Coast was such that it led to a war between McCarthy and Ashanti. Now, what was the status quo in the Gold Coast, or the situation prevailing in the Gold Coast? Now, when McCarthy arrived, there was an armed rivalry between the Ashanti and the southern state, and this armed rivalry was disrupting British trade with the people. Now, we have earlier learned about the causes of the Ashanti-Fanti Wars, as I indicated in at the beginning of our lesson. Ashanti and the southern states, mainly the Fantis, had been engaged in war for several years, and so because of that, it had disrupted trading activities. Of course, when there is war, you don't expect people to come out to trade, because there is fear and panic, there is instability in the society, and therefore it would actually impede trading activities. And so areas where, or countries that are engulfed in war-torn countries, you realize that there is not much economic activities going on there. So this is what McCarthy came to inherit: war among the Asantis and the southern states. Bear also in mind that the British were trading with these two people, the Fantis being middlemen, and the Ashantis, who were in possession of the commodities needed by the British. And so what would McCarthy do? And if you were McCarthy, what would you have done in order to bring about trade, so that the people, of course the British and the local people, could trade? What would you have done if you were in the shoes of McCarthy? Because obviously war does not encourage trade. Now, McCarthy decided to go to war with the Ashanti and to destroy the Ashanti power. So he felt that going to war with Ashanti and fighting the Ashanti and subduing them would lead to will bring about a peaceful atmosphere for trade to continue, purposely because maybe he underestimated the power of the Ashanti, and most of these British or European governors came with themselves this superiority complex perception. And so I'm sure McCarthy was in that space where he felt that who are these Asantis to actually disrupt trade. And so he decided to go to war or to destroy the Asante Empire. And how would he do that? He decided to go to war with the Asante. So that was a cause of McCarthy's war, trade, because of the armed rivalry. The next cause of Sir Charles McCarthy's war also had to do with tensions that also developed because McCarthy failed to, notify the Asante Nana Osei-Bonsu as at that time that he had assumed the governorship as custom demanded. Now, in those days, when any governor is appointed or comes to the Cape Coast Castle, he has to reveal himself or go to the Asante or to even reveal himself to the Asante or notify the Asante of his presence in the Gold Coast. However, when Charles McCarthy arrived, as I have already indicated, he did not notify the Asante Osei-Bonsu as at that time, and Asante's Menchia felt, disrespected for Osei-Bonsu for McCarthy not to have notified the Asante of his arrival. And indeed, today, if you find out that world leaders, of course, presidents and prime ministers of other countries come to Ghana, and most often the first point of call is the Asante, or even after visiting the presidents at the Flagstaff House, their next call is the Asante. I think you should understand that this practice has been there even before or even during pre-colonial periods. Now, that was also a cause of the war between McCarthy and the Asante. Now, all these causes are remote causes, all right? Another cause for the war was that the Asante and his chiefs were also disappointed by the fact that a more reasonable governor was not sent to replace Hope Smith. So Hope Smith was there, and after him came McCarthy. And so, in relation to the fact that McCarthy did not notify the Asante of his arrival, Asantes felt that a more reasonable, governor should have been appointed. Like Hope Smith should have been appointed to replace, of course, Hope Smith. And like I also said, Asantes harbored or Menchia harbored that kind of, displeasure in them. Now, another incident that caused the war was the arrest of a British Army sergeant by the Asante on the coast in May 1822. Now, the army sergeant was seized and murdered by an Asante party. The army sergeant was said to have insulted the Asante in a conflict with an Asante trader at Anmabo. This was also one of the causes of Sir Charles McCarthy's war with the Asante. Asante army, killed a British sergeant, or an Asante killed a British sergeant who was at the coast in May 1822. Now, Asantes have come to the coastal areas to trade. And what happened was that these Asante parties, which I presume were a group of Asante traders, seized and murdered this British sergeant. And the reason was simple. This British sergeant had insulted the Asante at Anmabo, a town located along the coast of Ghana today. It's very close to Cape Coast. Now, because of this supposed insult against the Asante, the king of the Asante or kingdom, this Asante party or traders decided to kill the British sergeant. So all these, development had an impact on the relations between the British and the Ashanti Kingdom. Okay, there was that friction. On these two people, the Ashantis, of course, Kingdom, and the British. So these were some of the various root causes that led to the McCarthy's war with the Ashanti. Now, let me also emphasize that even today, when you go to Ghana today, it is very, very highly, it is very scarce. Let me use that word. It is very scarce for you to hear anybody talk anyhow or speak against the Ashanti or king of the Ashanti kingdom. And that accounts for the reason why today in Ghana, when somebody speaks against the Ashanti or Tumfor, you realize that the person comes into the limelight. Menchia will summon him. Sometimes they even ban some of the people who insult the Ashanti. I remember a case where Odike, for instance, was banned from the Ashanti kingdom. Jemawuntumi has also had his share, and other people. So you don't insult Ashanti and go scot-free. It has been there from pre-colonial days. So you realize that all the things that are happening today in Ghana that a lot of people don't understand regarding how people or how Ghanaians pamper or see the Ashanti Kingdom or Ashanti, it's not starting today. It had been there since. Today, you and I know that you can't speak to Otumfor anyhow without them coming after you. Of course, other kings, chiefs, people speak to them anyhow and nothing happens. Not in Menchia. Now let's look at the immediate cause which brought about the war between Ashanti and McCarthy. Now, the Ashanti Dintra War of 1824 finally provided a platform for McCarthy to wrestle it out with Ashanti. So Ashanti and Dintra went to war in 1824. And bear in mind that always the British supports the southern states against the Ashanti. So whenever there is war between Ashanti and the south state, the British always support or go into the war in favor of the southern state. So in this case, Dintra was an ally to Sir Charles McCarthy's forces or the British forces. So McCarthy entered the war on the side of Dintra to punish, Ashanti, which he had long waited for. So McCarthy and the British, McCarthy and the Ashanti, McCarthy plus the Dintra forces came into contact with the Ashanti warriors at a river called River Adamanso. Okay, River Adamanso, near a village of Nsamankow in present-day Western region. So this is the war that we refer to as the Nsamankow War of 1824. This was the war because of where it was fought. The war was called Nsamankow War. So when the British and the Dintra forces came into contact or came face to face with the Ashanti army at the river Adamanso near the village called Nsamankow. But during the war, the British forces were ambushed and McCarthy was wounded and beheaded by the Ashantis, and his skull was taken to Kumasi as a war relic. So as McCarthy died in the war, or in the Nsamankow War of 1824, he was killed by the Ashanti army. They were actually ambushed at Nsamankow. Now McCarthy's head was cut off from his body, and the hair was put on a pole. It was placed on a pole, and they marched back to Kumasi with the skull of Sir Charles McCarthy as a war relic. So war relic, as we have it here. War relic simply means in those days when there is war, whatever you get access to, you bring it home, to show. And in those days, killing the leader of your enemy was very important. And so as a war relic, to come and show to the people or your people that this is what has happened. So McCarthy's skull was brought down to Kumasi, and it was just at the palace. I have read some stories where some European or Western historians say that the skull of McCarthy was used as a drinking cup by the Ashanti. I don't think that is true. It was not true. Ashantis don't use human skull to drink anything. Now let's then continue. So after this war, the British were humiliated because they had sworn to protect the southern states. And don't forget, they entered into the war supporting Danchra. And so you realize that for somebody to have promised to help you and now he's killed and he's defeated, the British were very, very humiliated. And so in 1826, August, 2 years later, the British came back again to attack the Ashantis in a battle called the Dodowa, or it was fought around Dodowa, and it was known as the Battle of Dodowa or the Akatamanso War. And this war also included the Ga Adangbe people, and that is also another evidence that the British were always supporting the southern states. So in this war, of course, the British together with the Ga Adangbe forces were able to defeat the Ashanti army, and they were victorious. So the British officially by 1828 had left the shores of the Gold Coast due to what they describe as unfavorable conditions to enhance trading and governance. So the aim of the British in 1826 at the Battle of Dodowa was to redeem her tarnished image during the Nsamankow War of 1824, where their army commander was killed. So after they were able to redeem that image by supporting the Ga against the Ashanti in 1826, the British were fed up with the behaviors of the Ashanti, and so they decided to leave the Gold Coast for good. By 1828, they had left the shores of the Gold Coast, claiming that they wanted to trade, but the conditions prevailing as a result of the Ashanti's behavior was not favorable for trade as well as governance. So Ashantis at a point, if not had succeeded today, at this point, had succeeded in preventing the British from colonizing the Gold Coast. Now bear in mind, the Gold Coast was different from Ashanti. The Gold Coast was the southern state, and Ashanti was there. So if I say Gold Coast, I'm referring to a southern state, excluding Ashanti. Yes, so Ashantis had succeeded in driving away the British from colonizing the Gold Coast. And if not for one thing, which we will look at in our next lesson, if not for one British, I wouldn't even say governor, he was just appointed as a president of the Council of Merchants, McLean. If not for him, Ashantis would have succeeded in preventing the British from colonizing the Gold Coast as far as 1828. You get it? And that would have changed the history of the Gold Coast or even Ghana today. And possibly, if the British have decided to leave, then it means that the southern states are or were now at the mercies of who? The Ashanti. And obviously Ashanti would have conquered those southern states without the assistance of the British. And indeed, the Ashanti Otumfuo would have been the king of Ashanti today, and I'm sure our history would have been different from what we already know. I mean, our government, our system of government and all of that. Now, the British, after leaving, decided to hand over their fort and castles at Cape Coast back to the merchants. You recall, before McCarthy came, it was the African Council of Merchants who were managing the fort and castles, and then McCarthy came in. So now they decided to return the fort and castle back to the merchants, because the merchants were not willing to leave the castle. They were here, they had seen gold, and so they were interested in it, so they were not willing to leave the castle or to even leave the Gold Coast, as the British monarch had, or for British Parliament had recommended. And so they appointed a president over the merchants, and he was in the person of Captain George McLean. Now, Captain George McLean was appointed as the president of the Council of Merchants in 1829, a year later. Now, because the British government had withdrew their representative from the Gold Coast, McLean, the president, or the merchants, were advised not to exercise their authority over the people living outside the castle. They were to only exercise their authority over only the people who lived within the castle, within the jurisdiction of the castle, not in any way to meddle in local politics. So they were warned, the merchants were warned, McLean was warned, not to interfere in the local politics of the people, as they tried to do with McCarthy, because they feared of the next consequences. You understand? And so McLean, in one way or the other, did not pay heed to this advice. If McLean had taken this advice, I bet you our history as a people, as a country, would have been different. This will bring us to the end of our discussions. In our next lesson, we shall take a look at the activities of McLean. What exactly did McLean do that brought about, or that brought again, the British government back to the Gold Coast, and for us for the whole Ghana country, Gold Coast, to be under colonial rule. Do not forget to share, like, and subscribe to our channel. Have a nice day, and thank you very much for your support.